I know, but I'm one who said we got to keep doing it. We got 8 people online, and if we want any quality speakers, we got to allow them the Zoom option. So unless we do it every week, we're not going to be able to do it occasionally, and then we're just limited to who can come here at noon, which is hardly anybody for speaking. So it's frustrating, but we just got to soldier on. Yeah. So what? Or is it on here that we've?
I don't know why. I have no idea why it's not working on the computer.
Oh, it is on the. It is on the.
But we're on full volume according to this 10 bar.
It's got to be a setting on that laptop. I don't know why it's not working.
Sure.
Can someone talk?
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Your volume.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me at all, chat?
Where's the speaker on this computer?
Oh, nice. It's got to be maybe. Wait a second. What's happening here? Oh, that's the camera. Okay. And we've played around with the volume sound settings, the bottom one there.
God, all you really need is if you just my reflection, if you just hook it up to Ron's, just pick the mic by Ron's phone, and then I'll do that. Then we just need to be able to hear you, and we can hear you.
That sounds good.
It's working. It's like the meeting is not.
Can you hear me at all?
Zoom. Or maybe this is screwing it up by thinking it's.
I don't think they want to listen in. I don't like to find out.
Yeah, it's funny. The test works, but the meeting doesn't go over.
Or we muted in Zoom. It's as simple as that.
No, we're not. It's the audio. That's the problem. So video.
Were we muted? What was it, Jeff?
Maria?
You mute your phone.
Mute my phone? Go ahead, I'm pretty sure it is.
Hello? Maria?
I can hear you, Lionel.
Can she hear me?
Yeah. She should be able to.
Yeah. Maria?
Okay, you book.
Maria,
Okay,
I missed
I can hear you.
now.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
I missed your classification speech. Was it in October or November? I can't remember.
November.
Okay, I'm gonna play it back. It'll be on tape, right?
Yeah, but it is, the sound was not, fell out several times.
Okay, well,
Sound, so anyway.
yeah, thank you.
Lionel, it's not live. You have to get a link because it's private information, so we don't post it on YouTube. It's there, but you have to get the link. If you want it, I'll send it to you.
Oh, do you mind doing that?
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Thanks, David.
Chad, you've frozen.
David, can you send that to me as well?
Yeah. Well, as long as Maria says it's fine. Maria, I can send it to both of them.
Yeah, it is. I was not thrilled with the quality.
Yeah, no,
Because,
it was,
yeah, so it is, so I felt like that sometimes my voice was not, you couldn't hear my voice, so then sometimes it didn't really make sense. I was not very happy with the result, let's say that.
Mm.
I thought in person it worked better,
yeah,
but you were also not there in person. So I sort of in the room, it was okay, but because of the connection, it fell out, so it made a very messy
yeah, I
impression.
know,
And I don't like to leave a messy impression.
No, no.
I get it.
Yeah. This is technology, don't forget, so.
Yeah. So it looks messy, but I hope you forgive me.
Oh,
The speed
That's-
of light is not working all the time.
hmm.
Yeah. And we've just lost our connection through the laptop now, so
Yeah.
see what happens here. As much as I'd love to have Zoom calls, this is just painful.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's painful. It's painful.
And 80% of it is because of the Wi-Fi at the Toronto lawn is really poor. And we're trying to fix that, but it's not really working. So Chad's rebooted his computer, I can tell. But it's crazy.
Too bad we can't get a dedicated line somehow.
Well,
But
you know, I have to tell you that we've actually, that's what we did do. We went and connected to the phone and did a
Yeah.
hardwired line. I don't know why it's not working this week.
Yeah.
The other option is to hotspot to someone's phone, which I've done in the past. But I find my Apple product, I never had these issues because the technology and the processors in the Apple products is so much better than the computer to the laptops. I never had these issues, and it's crazy, but you know.
Well, that's where all the devices talking to each other should be Apple, right?
Well, I mean, I can't say
mean,
that, but
Optimum, yeah.
I don't have issues when I use my Apple products, but I do have issues when I use my PC products. So
Why did you move from Apple away?
no, because the Apple iPad that I used during my presidency is $1,200.
I see.
Whereas the laptop I bought was $400.
I see.
So
So it's
we can go and invest in an Apple product, but it's not going to be cheap. That's all.
I have all Apple products.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
pretty reliable stuff because there's not a lot of
It works well together.
they work very well together, but
Yeah.
they don't like playing with other brands, that's for sure.
Good seeing your face again, Neelam.
Good to see your face again.
No, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh,
No,
No,
he
no.
is. Neelam is.
yes.
Okay, you're back.
Good to see you, Lionel.
Okay, yes.
That's good.
Oh, no, I think.
But it was the first time I've ever been involved in a funeral. And I'm gonna give $10 to say thank you to my parents for pre-planning their funeral. Because we did not have to make one single decision from start to the end. From the entire event, from to the funeral home, to the visitation, to the church service, to the cemetery. They pre-planned everything. And
Wow,
I could not imagine walking in there and having to do it.
that's a
that from
message to
scratch.
a number of us that should be looking.
So,
That sounds like Walter 3, is it?
I don't know if it's that or Craig Armstrong, one of the two.
Paul.
No, it's Paul. Yes.
Oh, it's Paul Buccini.
Oh, okay.
Okay, no,
Okay, I have an envelope with some funds for Lisa. That were donated to thank Chad for his wonderful presentation on Tesla to my investment club. So thank you, Chad. We've got a real expert in our midst here. If you ever want to know about the technology, behind Tesla, Chad Jefferson. There you go, Lisa.
Oh, thank you.
Chad can speak forever on Tesla.
You've got $10 for Happy Boat.
Okay. I better do one more. I've got $20 because I accidentally stole 15 last week. And I'll do 5 for the time value of money.
Pretty high interest.
5.
Okay. And what's it for?
And my happy bucks, it's great to see Lionel on the screen.
Oh,
Oh.
Hi, it's Maria.
Being chairman is the kick.
And Maria from the Netherlands, Maria from the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Are there any announcements? Or if you prefer to leave them, I know, Nan, you have one. But we could have our speaker first and do the announcements after.
Yes.
So, Paul, if you're ready,
I'll introduce them.
and Hattie, Jackie?
Yeah, I'm gonna introduce
Yeah,
them.
Jackie's going to introduce Paul.
Should we bring up the
And there's glasses up here, they belong to someone
I'm doing it now, Ron.
here.
I'm delighted to introduce,
What happened?
Paul
We're
was
sharing the
born in
screen.
Montreal, Canada, and spent much of his childhood in the Canadian prairies, to which he attributes his interest in landscape and atmosphere. He graduated with degrees
So can you see that?
and environmental studies from the University of Waterloo and worked in architectural firms in New York, Barcelona, and Hong Kong. He now lives in Toronto with his Juno-nominated wife, Sarah Raff Fraser, who teaches at the Faculty of Music, and his 2 wonderful daughters. Paul's reputation for excellence was established at the onset of his career, and in 1993, with an award-winning design for Toronto's waterfront development. His architectural experience includes involvement in world-class projects such as the Chinese Vice President's house in Shanghai and the Barcelona waterfront development. His art experience includes temporary environmental installations and permanent sculptural works, such as the new Regina Gateway Commission that you see if you fly into Regina. In 2001, Paul became the youngest ever recipient of the Ontario Association of Architects Applied Award for Lifetime Achievement. And in 2009, Paul was awarded the Allied Arts Medal by the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. Paul is a frequent guest professor and lecturer. In 2006, he represented Canada at NAFTA-sponsored Architects Lecture Series at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And more recently, he's lectured on sustainability and artistic innovation in architecture, including at New York's University, the Art Gallery of Ontario, and York University's Schulich School of Business. He will speak to us today on his latest project, the Arc of Memory, a national monument to the victims of communist authoritarianism. I'd like to welcome Paul Raff, and I want to set the record straight. He is not a graduate of Northern. But
Ron, can you see the presentation?
other school down the street, you know, the one that starts with an N.
You can see the presentation, yeah.
Please welcome.
Thank you, Jackie, for that detailed introduction. And thank you for welcoming me here today. I'm happy to talk about this project. It's our country's newest national.
Audio is not strong though, David.
I think he needs to be on his mic.
Yeah.
Where is the mic?
It's the turn it
Very
on.
close to the mountain.
Maybe you have to raise it. Hold on.
Maybe we could do move the table over and get the computer closer.
What are we doing now?
Are you picking up the sound of if I?
The people on Zoom are having a hard time hearing.
Hello, hello.
Can you hear on Zoom?
That's better.
Okay, that's better.
All right. All systems go?
Yep.
So Arc of Memory is the artistic title of this monument. It is a new national monument in Ottawa. It was inaugurated just a few weeks ago. I was in Ottawa for a big ribbon cutting and ceremony. It has been years in the making. It was 8 years ago that my colleagues and I won a large international competition for the design. But the monument was actually conceived of more than 20 years ago by a consortium of groups from across Canada with tremendous diversity of ethnic representation, from Vietnamese to people of former Czech Republic, Hungarians, Estonians, Poles, Germans, Russians. There is a kind of vast diaspora in Canada that has roots and interests in the issue. So indeed, the memorial is dedicated to the victims of crimes perpetuated by communist regimes, and a celebration of the role Canada has played in providing refuge. I did want to say that as a Canadian citizen, someone who was born and grew up in Canada and went through the educational system here, I was amazed to find my own lack of knowledge about this tremendous topic, this massive, interesting, transformational, and often unfortunate political history of the 20th century. And for me, a tremendous amount of research and study by me and my team went into preparing for this international competition. They put there were some political controversies also around this monument, because when it was first announced, there was a very poor site selection process. I believe probably a politician pointed to somewhere on a map of Ottawa and picked a site that a lot of people thought very inappropriate, and prepared a scale of monument that they also thought was inappropriate. And so there was a tremendous amount of controversy and resistance, which is a good thing, because what ended up happening is it resulted in a much more careful, thoughtful, and informed site selection process. So the location of the monument is properly situated in our nation's capital. More on that in a minute. But also a proper selection process, meaning a blind competition, a juried competition, where the jury is an informed representative group, and where there's a broad call to the international community, and teams which needed to be made up of artists, architects, and landscape architects ultimately competed. My team, in which Raff Studio, my firm, was both the artist and the architect for the project, working with the Landscape Architect Planning Partnership from Toronto, was actually the only Canadian-led team of the final 5 in the competition, and we were delighted to be selected. We go ahead to the next slide. This is a satellite view of Ottawa. You might be familiar with it, the National Precinct, the Parliament buildings, kind of by the river there, and a number of very important institutions, the Bank of Canada and so on. And also, if you can go to the next slide. There are a number of monuments, and there's a sort of cultural circuit that the Culture Department of the federal government and the National Capital Commission have been developing over time, including the relatively new Navy Memorial, the Holocaust Memorial. It includes the Canadian War Museum and so on. So this was sort of an addition to this extremely important actual and symbolic landscape. Public monuments play a very significant role in society. They're tangible representations of collective memory, cultural identity, and shared values. So they can help us commemorate and remember our history. They can play an educational role. They can also, as an architect, because of my bias here, is they can also help enhance our public realm and provide interesting, focal points and sculptural presence, kind of public art within our public realm. I think they're an important part of our collective identity. Next slide, please. So This is the National War Memorial in Ottawa. I put this here not only because it's one of the old ones in Ottawa, but it's also kind of the way memorials were in Western civilization. Memorials date back thousands of years. If you've been to Rome and seen Trajan's Column, for example, where historic events and heroes are commemorated. There is a strong tradition in Western architecture and monument making that this one plays into, with bronze figures and a plinth and a kind of vertical upward heaven-bound kind of statue. Let's go to the next slide, please. But monuments have been evolving. This one by the great British architect Edward Lutyens, the First World War, the cenotaph from 1920. You might have seen it in London. It's in a very prominent location. Stripped down some of the symbolism and figurality, and it's a much more sort of ominous and abstract monument. Then if you can go to the next slide. This is a very well-known one in Washington, D.C., the Vietnam's Veterans Memorial, designed also in an international competition by the American architect Maya Lin. Took a radical stance, and instead it wasn't so much about glory in heaven, and it's black and it's in the earth. It's like a scar, and you descend into it and you see the names of people who've died and sacrificed themselves. It was very controversial, and in fact, under political pressure, figures of glorious soldiers were in fact added to this memorial to help appease the political forces at work. Next slide, please. This is a more recent one you might be familiar with. This is the 9/11 Memorial in New York. So it follows Maya Lin's idea of kind of being in the ground. It's very large in scale, particularly effective at night. I can tell you from having studied it and been there a number of times. It has a sense of what's lost or what's missing. This kind of negative space in the ground. Next slide, please. And then this, on a very cold, gray December day in Ottawa a few weeks ago, is our new memorial Arc of Memory in Ottawa. By contrast, it is a bit of a filigree. You can actually see through it. You can see it's made out of thousands of pieces, about 4,500 bronze rods and fins. And I'll explain the design in just a moment. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial view, bird's eye view from the competition rendering. You can see that the monument has a sort of forecourt, which allows for gathering and ceremony, where the people are standing in the white space. And then you step up a little bit, it's elevated on a kind of large plinth that gives the sculptor a sort of tableau. And then it's two sweeping arc forms. It's very much meant to be an experiential sculpture, less a direct symbol of something and more something that you experience by circumnavigating and walking around it very directly, visually. Next slide, please. Well, my team was tasked with coming up with a design for a monument. We have our own artistic obsessions and things that drive our work. So I wanted to explain a little bit about my artistic interest and ongoing life's work of studying sun angles, sun orientation, and natural light. This is a small gazebo that we designed more than 20 years ago, which is specifically around sun angles. And what it does is it creates a full shadow on the interior in the peak of summer when you want to be in the shade. And then it is designed to allow the sun to stream in say September, the cooler months, when in this climate at this latitude, you really want to be in the sun. Next slide, please. And next, please. And next, please. This is a house, one of many we've done. We've done have to do a lot of houses and commercial buildings in our architectural practice, but natural light plays a tremendous role in the way we design buildings. And this is a passive solar house, so we've designed it so that it shades the sun in the summer and you keep it, so you don't heat the building and have to artificially cool it and run air conditioning and increase your, cost and carbon footprint in the summer, but then it specifically lets the sun in strategic ways to capture its energy and help it heat the house in the winter. So we're using it from a very practical way, but also an experiential way. At the same time, we're trying to do it so someone inside a building has a greater sense and enjoyment and appreciation of the passing of days and the passing of seasons. Next slide, please. And by doing so, we try to make architecture not something that just protects you from nature and separates you from it, but one that helps you experience it and connect with it, even in the city. Next slide, please. This is a new subway station from about 6 years ago at it's the Vaughan subway station, the part of the Toronto subway extension. We were part of a group of artists and architects working on this project. Next slide, please. Our obsession with natural light and sun angles drove us to help locate and create apertures in the ceiling that are specifically designed to let sun angles down deep into the subway station at certain times of day and year and bounce it through chromated reflectors to bring color as well as light down into the station. And then the whole thing is a bit of a series of reflections and colors makes a sort of atmospheric skyscape in place of the sky on this duomo ceiling. Next slide, please. I want to show, this is a sketch from another monument we designed in which we were really studying these sun angles. So in Toronto, or in this part of the world, the trajectory of the sun is very, very different in the winter from summer. It goes, let's see which way am I facing? It actually goes, this is south, it goes like this at winter solstice, and it goes like this at summer solstice. And we used to have to study charts and actually make little models to understand that. And now the computer, we can just plug in the time and the latitude and it will tell us that. So it's very easy to do. But what this study shows is an idea of trying to make a sculpture that visually expresses all of the sun angles of a whole year. Next slide, please. And we did this, and it created this kind of sculptural form where each one of those leaves is 1 hour of the day, and then there are various lines going upwards is every day of the year. Next slide, please. So it's a 3-dimensional calendar. So this is one we actually had built. This one's called Hours of the Day. It's right off Queen's Park Circle, just to the east of Queen's Park Circle, in a park there by the Ontario government buildings, which you can see in the background. But this was one of our first iterations of a sculptural expression at all of the daylight hours of the year. Next slide, please. These are detailed shots of it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Probably should have thought this before, but if it's really easy, we can turn out the lights to see the slides a little bit. Next slide, please. Okay, so back to Ottawa. The siting of the monument is, that we're talking about today, is in the Garden of the Province and Territories, which is right along Wellington Avenue. So it goes right from in front of the Parliament buildings, along past all the institutional buildings. And just as you start to go downhill, either across the bridge or down to the War Museum, it's in that park. So not a high intensity pedestrian park, but a high visibility part of the ceremonial route and practical route through Ottawa. Next slide, please. Some conceptual images here. On the left is a sundial, so a bronze garden element that you find in a garden or park, which is actually an instrument for reading light, but also became a kind of decorative feature. And then the idea of capturing all these hours as part of our thinking in this last monument we showed you, in the one that we're about to look at. Next slide, please. And then these are our design drawings from the competition. So on the left, you see a vertical fin, which is holding up a number of bronze rods. Each one of those rods is 1.2 meters long. Each one points at an azimuth, which is an azimuth, which means it's the vector of the unique angle of the sun at that given moment in time. And so on the longest day of the year, you have, say, 16 of them. And on the shortest day of the year, on the right, you have maybe 7 of them, or whatever that is for the number of daylight hours. And it's a highly three-dimensional geometry that they describe through these individual lines that make a three-dimensional shape. Next slide, please. And then here on the bottom, you see a plan, you see the 2 arcs. There are 365 vertical fins along these arcs. For every day of the year, they're actually marked with the date, January 1st, January 2nd, January 3rd, and so on. And then you see an elevational view. So each of these 365 fins hold up the azimuth rods. All in all, I think they're 4,412 rods, daylight hours. And they go from the peak of summer solstice to winter solstice in the middle and back up through spring to summer solstice at that end. Next slide, please. Here you see a three-dimensional cut through. You can see the kind of calendar base plate where you can actually, and on the end fins, you can actually read the date and the time of day. Next slide, please. So the result is that it's a three-dimensional calendar. And it is made up of so many pieces. I already told you how many, but when you see it, it expresses a kind of vastness. As an artistic approach, it was important to me that visual sculpture express vastness, because what we're commemorating are tens of millions of crimes and hundreds of millions of victims over 4 or 5 continents over many, many decades. The vastness of what's being memorialized cannot be summarized in a single image or picture. And instead, we created a three-dimensional calendar in which key moments in history, go to the next slide. And to the next slide. I'm going to digress for a second. The play of light and the filigree and the shadows are part of the kind of artistic intention and effect of this kind of form. Next slide, please. And then this is the one I wanted to get to. Part of the idea was that key moments in the history that's being memorialized, like in this case, the fall of the Berlin Wall, are actually located in time. So key moments in history, maybe it's June 4th, Tiananmen Square. Maybe it's the day that your family's farm of 500 years was taken away from you in southern China. You know, maybe it's the day your cousin disappeared and you never knew what happened to him. Any of these moments in history, personal, collective, specific to one country or ethnicity, specific to a family, specific to anybody, can be found and memorialized and recognized as being here and present in some way and relevant now at this moment in history. Artistically, when we come up with these ideas, it's a bit of a process, and there's a lot of experimentation, hand sketching, physical models, digital models. We used very high-tech means to create the template for this sculpture, but this was our testing of it as a first maquette and three-dimensional model. I think it's interesting that it's kind of open and receptive as a form. Next slide, please. And the arc form has a lot of sort of, sculptural experiential qualities. We, in our practice, use the term, we didn't coin the term, it was coined, I think, by French artists in the 1970s, passive kinetic strategy. So passive kinetic strategy in art means that the artwork doesn't move, it is static, but that movement is essential to its experience and meaning. So in this case, the sense of the sweeping of the curves or the rhythm, and it's meant to be very directly experiential. As you move around, it unfolds. Next slide, please. The aerial view. Next slide, please. And it looks different from every angle. So it kind of sculpturally begs movement to get your head around its form. Next slide, please. it's also meant to be unique. We're intentionally trying to be original and push the creative interpretation of what a monument can be in the 21st century. Next slide, please. So this is it on a very, very gray. There was hail and wind and fog on just a few weeks ago in Ottawa. So we'll get hopefully some more flattering and beautiful photography in the spring. Next slide, please. All of these are from the opening day. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I wanted to mention, that's the end of the slides, and if we are able to run the video just to, without the sound, just to show a bit more of what it looks like, we can move to questions if anyone has any questions. I wanted to say something I'm going to say is kind of maybe off the record, which is that the federal government did not allow us to put those names on the rods. The fall of the Berlin Wall, Tiananmen Square are not noted on those rods. We all know those dates in history. I hope someone ties a ribbon on that moment in history on that day every year for any of those events. But we can understand that there's been they didn't want to provoke, I think, political controversy. They didn't say this. I don't know why, but we were not putting those names on the roads. The original design called for bronze, and we ended up doing it in a bronze coated steel. And then the plinth itself is a combination of limestone and concrete. And there are granite, there's a wall of granite with plaques in it, which is a yet to be completed part of the memorial. Unfortunately, there's been a controversy because on the back of the wall, which has all the title and the name mark of memory and all of that, is a list of is an array of names of people who've been honored with donations toward this cause. Some of them are people who might still be living, some of them are people who died decades ago. But because of politicking and political pressures, that part of the monument apparently has not been unveiled. They have to vet all those names, which is not a particularly easy thing to do. There are hundreds of names of people who died 60, 70 years ago. I'm not sure, honestly, how they're going to do it. Yeah.
It seems that most of your architecture takes into account nature in almost every form. Can I ask what in your background made that so important to you?
You can ask. I don't know. I became an architect because I was highly sensitized to qualities of environment, cities, nature. It doesn't matter what, buildings, rooms. It can be a bathroom, it can be Versailles. It doesn't. I'm interested in it, and you know, we live in a crazy climate here, and as Jackie mentioned, I grew up in the Canadian prairies, where light and is magical and extreme, and so it's always been an interest and obsession of mine, and I think it's essential. All of our energy comes from the sun. You know, we're so mindful of it. I don't know if you've noticed how the quality of light shifted when we turn the lights off in here, but even this room is pretty interesting. You know, we've got west light bouncing because of those light, diffusing in a certain way, and I find, this very soft light, fully getting through this room. It's just visually and experientially, as well as in terms of energy and building performance as an architect, essential to our experience in living in buildings. I hope that answers your question.
Does the sculpture run from solstice to solstice, or is it calendar year? Like, so it
Solstice to
starts,
solstice.
that's what I figured.
Yeah, the break in the, yeah, you can read it. The break is near the calendar year, but not quite at the calendar year. Yeah, so it's governed more by, to restate your question another way, it's governed more by, it's a solar calendar more than a human calendar. It's a hybridization with the solar governance, yeah.
Practical question. Fantastic. So thank you, Jackie, again. But practically, national monument, does that mean that you don't have to worry, or it's the government that looks after you?
It does mean government looks after it. So all public artworks and monuments, hopefully have someone who is dedicated to caring for it. So if it's a public artwork in the subway station, or PTC has a plan to, it's in this park at the city of Toronto, Toronto has a public art conservatory. So in this case, I don't know who it is. There's probably a branch.
You don't have to worry about it.
No, it's not me, yeah.
The reason for my question is, I'm involved with the Swedish situation, and Swedish embassy, and I got involved because of the consulate here, wants to donate a bench in the memory of our government.
Yeah.
To Ireland. And this, the artist is living in Sweden. He's actually 98 years young.
Yeah.
So we have that for him. And this bench comes, has been placed in a number of places. So it sits outside the Foreign Office in Stockholm. There is one in Budapest, there is one in New York, and so on, and we just wanted to get one into the Toronto, and it is a bench, and then it has two, like a suit, a briefcase, which is sort of a low. And and I have not been involved in the negotiations with the National Capital Commission, but it has been based on the conversation with the ambassador, and he's now actually the Swedish ambassador in Washington, so he has other problems to consider and work with. And the new ambassador is not necessarily as excited, I think, about it or whatever, but we need to do something because it's embarrassing that nothing happened. And one of the first things that came from the National Commission was a contract for 35 pages. And the big thing was that the government of Sweden was supposed to look after this. And actually this site selection is also interesting. And I actually followed this a little bit through my colleagues, particularly one of my Czech colleagues, was very involved. And, he got gray hair, so.
Yeah, it's not easy, so you can't just put anything you want out in public, even if it's a beautiful thing and you think everyone might want it. There is usually a complicated process to get approval to do it, and determining how it's going to be maintained is no small part of that. So with a monument like this, it's made out of, granite and bronze, which are the most durable, low maintenance materials, blah, blah, blah. And it's engineered so people with hockey sticks trying to pry it open late at night wouldn't be able to, and all that. But even then, there's going to be some maintenance sooner or later, and there needs to be a consideration of how that's going to be handled.
First of all, thank you very much, Paul, for your time and everything. The whole subject of a monument to the victims of authoritarian communism is a little is a bit provocative, or could be perceived as being provocative. I want to know, what, has there been any international reaction to the opening of this monument in Canada?
Well, I think it's a very simple divide. There are the people who understand it. And so, for example, I have a few Estonian friends and got messages of appreciation and delight. And then there are people like I would have been, not knowing much about it, who scratch my head and wonder about it. And I think that's the whole point is, you know, millions and millions of people were murdered. There were mass murders, there were ethnic cleansings, their property was seized, their privacy was taken away, they were tortured, they were re-educated. The crimes are massive crimes against humanity. They're very, very significant. It deserves to be memorialized. And for a Canadian, an educated, supposedly educated Canadian, to say something as glib as, well, why is what is this, some sort of like right-wing project, is ignorant, disrespectful, and appalling. But there are lots of people who think that.
Thank you.
Yeah, two things. One, just a suggestion. If you want to vet the names on the artwork quickly, give them to the reporters and you'll get your, anybody's controversial, you get it back in about 5 days.
Well, that's why they're being vetted, is because the reporters, and there are only 2 of them in the whole country fanning the flames, cast doubt on the integrity of the names, and so they with zero evidence, they shame the federal government into not yet unveiling that part of the monument. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. My wife and I are going to go to Ottawa in beginning of April, so this is definitely going to be our one of our stops.
Oh, good.
I can't wait to see it in person.
Oh, good.
I'm sure, like things like this, the pictures just ask that we don't do the justice.
No, and I'll be interested to hear your reaction. It's unusual. It's subtle. I think it looks different from a distance, from up close. It's porous, which is a monument to be a sort of filigree, has a sense of breathing and being part of its environment. But it's, you know, it's certainly for someone with more conservative tastes going to seem very odd as a monument. Yeah.
I may have missed, but the idea, like somebody in the government has to come up and say, okay, we want to do a monument to victims of the communist regimes. So I'm not sure where the whole thing started from.
And it started, it was not a government idea. It came from, it was a conversation amongst certain ethnic groups in different parts of Canada who themselves celebrated moments, like, you know, they're all, there's a big one in the Vietnamese community is going to have a celebration of this monument in, I don't know the dates, but they started to find out that they had something in common, that they were celebrating and commemorating certain parts of their own history, and they wanted to sort of come together and to have a national monument. And they were probably inspired by the fact that the United States, in the Great Mall of Washington, which is, for anyone interested in the history of monuments, it's a pretty good place to visit. They have a maybe not an artistically particularly good one, but they do have a similarly.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about communism. You grow up and you go to university, and when I went in the late 60s, early 70s, communism wasn't bad. It was just a mistake of too much bureaucracy. But excuse me, I have a Ukrainian background, and I went to Ukraine to do some work from CETA before the Russians held everything up. And you can see what the Nazis did, and you can see what the communists did. Quite frankly, there wasn't much difference.
Paul, was your experience with this project and the bureaucracy and controversy and everything else soured your view of doing this type of thing again, or you
Yes.
want to do more and bigger? Or this is the last one?
Yeah, no, it's not the last one because, you know, it took eight years from concept to completion. But the subway station I worked on was 10. Yeah, it's part of the life of an architect. This one was, I shouldn't have said that. It makes me cautious. It's tough. It's highly politicized. I'm just gonna say that, the federal government didn't send a representative on inauguration day. They were supposed to, but I think they were so afraid of being seen to be any criticism that they didn't do it. Shame on them for that. Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you very much, Vaughn. Officially, thank you, as my 2-year-old daughter would say. It's beautiful. And yeah, no, really impressive and really, and I would look forward to seeing it too. And maybe that's like a good excuse to go see a hockey game over there or something. But yeah, no, that's really cool. And good to know that in true Canadian fashion, it is indeed hockey stick group. So I appreciate that.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your interest.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Dan has a report for the Environment Committee. Dan, are you okay with that?
Sorry. Well, I know I'm talking to a room of optimists. I know that for sure. I'm hoping I'm also talking to a room of big dreamers. Chad and Bill kindly have given me about 5 minutes to talk to you about what we're trying to do with the Environmental Committee. And we really need all of you on side to support us and hopefully add your ideas. I've made notes to try and make this as succinct as I can for you, and to make sure I don't miss anything. Since I accepted the role of chair of the Environmental Committee last year, I have been trying to think of a way, or we have, to make a major contribution to climate change on behalf of Rotary. We have done things like cleaning up plastic so it doesn't go into the water, the fish don't eat it, it doesn't get into our brains. Positive, we planted trees, but it takes them a while to grow before they can take in enough carbon to really solve any of our problems. With the recent wildfires, floods, storms, etc., it's obvious we need to act immediately. That's why for the past year, we've been trying to find a simple, succinct way to actually measure the improvement in each of our carbon footprints. I believe it's hard for people to get involved in climate change when they really have no idea if what they're doing is making a difference, and if it is, how much. Toronto City has developed a net zero goal for 2030, but so far from the meeting I was in, they're still only asking for opinions rather than giving guidance on how to do it. We're not far from 2030. Someone needs to start making the change and getting people a way to do it. Why not us? We Rotarians at this point have 2 choices. We can give up as it's too late, too far gone, or we can band together and lead the charge to make a difference. We have over 1.4 million Rotarians worldwide, and if each reduced their carbon footprint by 10% in the most intense carbon production area of their individual lives, can you imagine the effect that would have on our world? I have a suggestion that I think at least starts us moving in the right direction to effectively reduce our carbon footprint for each of us in our home lifestyle and to measure it. We can't do everything, but we can do something. Here is a sample challenge that I believe will be very easy, and hoping you can join in. Here it is. For an individual's daily life, the greatest contributor to our carbon footprint And therefore climate change is in two areas of our lives. It is in fossil fuels that we burn, foods that we eat. With regard to food, our highest carbon footprint is eating red meat, as we all know. Actually, eating anything that grazes is high. If you eat red meat 10 times a month, if you agree to eat one less time, you are now down 10% in your carbon footprint in the most important area of food consumption. How hard is that? 1 kilogram of beef produces 99 kilograms of carbon as it's being produced. It's horrible. Do you drive your car every day? If you drive 3 times less a month, you've reduced your carbon footprint by 10%. If your house is heated by gas, the US Department of Energy says that you can reduce your heating costs by as much as 10% if you reduce the temperature at night during the 8 hours when you're sleeping by 7 to 10 degrees. If we can do even these 3 things, we've just made a major change in the areas of our personal lives that produce the most carbon and therefore the most damage to our world. That's not helping reduce the carbon that's already out there, but it's stopping us from putting more out there that we have to work at planting more trees to get rid of. Can we try this challenge? I hope. Neelam has created a meeting where the environmental chairs of many clubs meet. At the last meeting, I talked about this idea. A number of the clubs are on side. They would love to be involved. They're waiting for us to give them a formula to follow as well. We on our own, it's a very small club, but there was a study by Erica Chenoweth, a political scientist at Harvard, that showed that if 3.5% of a population, any population, i.e. Rotary, is actively moving toward a goal, especially if it's positive, then the rest of the population will follow. Our club could be a leader in a very important Rotary movement. We could be the group of people that actually started a movement that can change the world for us, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I think we owe them that. And then if they see grandpa or grandma doing this, they might join in as well and actually feel some hope. We talk about people not knowing about Rotary. Can you imagine the media coverage if a number of clubs actually started this and where it could grow to? There's of course much more to be done, but let's do something. For those of you that know environment, this is a small step. I am aware of that, but at least we're doing something positive. I'm going to ask you right now, how many of you would be willing to join me in this challenge for just the next 6 months? See how it goes. Fabulous. Thank you for support. I will send some written information out through Lars to everybody. And what we'd like you to do this month is simply look at what you're doing. How many times are you driving a car? How much red meat and so on are you eating? Just watch, keep track this month, and then we'll start in February. Thank you all so much. Extreme day.
Thank you, man. Wonderful presentation. Are there any other announcements? Anyone have it? Yes, Jackie.
Foundation committee meeting following.
All right, in here, Jackie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you know a better bar.
Yeah. Well, there's quieter spots, but any other announcements? Okay, if that's it, then that's all of ours. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Jackie, for organizing the speaker. And actually, I had to be an architect, and finally, I even got admitted to the Chalmers in Gothenburg. But at that time, I'd become too interested in student politics. But no, this was very interesting, and came to think of John Bonnick, who was the last of our charter members who passed away. But John was an architect and actually quite well known part of the master plan for the York University. But anyway, Bill stole my part of my reason for that, but referring to, I noticed that there was some activities from the monument in London. And 1759, on this day, the British Museum opened its doors for the first time. And 1797, and unfortunately my top hat is in Sweden, otherwise I would come up. That was the first time someone was wearing a top hat, which also in London. And coming back to the hockey, it turns out that this day has been interesting for two star goalies have had their first shutout. The first one was in 1950 to Sorchak, who played for the Detroit Red Wings. And that was the first of 115 that he had in his career. It was against the Canadians. No, sorry, it was against the Rangers. 1-0 game. And then Patrick Roy did the same thing in 1986 when his Montreal Canadiens beat Winnipeg Jets. Anyway, more serious stuff. I haven't seen anything yet about Rotary and the fires in LA, but I would imagine that there will be opportunities. Typically, the district governors of the affected areas contact their counterparts, and we had actually a call yesterday, a few of us with Virginia. And I could also see that doesn't necessarily affect us, but that Rotary has something called the District Relief Grant, which, for instance, has been used in Ukraine. And it is typically for district governors in areas that have a national disaster of some kind, or so on and so forth. They can apply for these disaster grants, relief grants. And it is to give opportunities for immediate things, cash and so on and so forth. But I can also see that eventually we will see applications from California districts and clubs about global grants to rebuild the infrastructure in that area. Another thing that actually happened today was in 2001, the Wikipedia was launched, and obviously we are there. Another idea that came down, I think twice, typically, and I don't know what will happen now that I'm going to drive less. Thanks to that. But it's either in the car or in the shower. And driving down here struck me, and it was something, the message about that Ford, a completely different thing. But of course, he has promised that we will get $200 each back of our money. And like Norma said, it's probably to buy your vote. I don't, I'm not a Canadian citizen, so I can't. But it struck me, and I heard others suggesting the same thing, that we, for those who want to do it, can donate this to the club, the 200 or 40. And in one area where we are a little bit short is in the area of having funds that don't necessarily outside of the foundation, where we don't need a receipt or whatever you should say. So please feel free to donate part or all of the $200 to the club. Let us know whether you want a receipt, so it will go to the foundation, or but anyway, that's that. When I left, there were 11 responses to the survey for December 4th. It would be nice if we could have a few more people to look into it. I know that it is kind of messy to go between all those, choose between 4 of the 20 different suggestions, but looking at the 11, there are a few that has crystallized. So, and I also got a message about bingo. it is not confirmed, but the latest is in that the email, it said that it will actually move from St. Clair to Delta Etobicoke. 360 Evans is the address, on the 17th of February, which I think is family day or whatever it's called. It's in that area, I believe. So confirmation will come, but the schedule for those of us who are scheduled for bingo service will remain the same in the new facility. But it's obviously going to be quite a lot. I think that was, well, there were a lot of others, but that is it. Well, thank you again, Jackie. That was one of the most interesting speeches.
Thanks, Lars. Any other announcements? Yes, Walter.
Next week, is that our Raw weekend?
Yes.
Okay, so we will have a conflict because we have an out of the cold commitment also next Wednesday evening. So I will be calling various people. So I guess we'll have to choose again whether to go to the out of the cold or to the Raw. Okay, I just wanted to confirm. But I will be calling people that are on my list.
Okay, thanks, Walter.
I have no idea, is the 29th a Zoom, a hybrid, or what? I don't know.
It's a Zoom only.
29th is Zoom only, okay, great. You should read the messages that come out. I do.
Okay,
All this
that's
other stuff in
all
there.
is today, that is, to go to Rotary, this meeting is adjourned.
Short answer.
It's
Okay.
not ladies.
Oh, I understand. Okay. Because I'm part of it, and it's definitely already.
Okay.
I have no idea. Oh, that's fine. Okay. All right, thank you.
Probably.
Yeah, you know what the problem is like, do it for. Without finding your pod goes in.
Did we lose them?
Is that it?
I don't know what happened. Something happened.
Was that, did we
I think they
time out?
It looks like they timed out at 1:30. I guess that is it.
Okay.
Well, it was good to talk to you and good.
Yeah. And enjoy your trip.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll love it. And it'll be a lot warmer than it is in Fenland Falls. It's summer down there.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
And Maria,
Okay.
enjoy Holland, or are you in Curacao now?
I'm in Holland. In Holland.
How's the
Yeah.
weather? Is it damp and wet there? Or is it cold?
Yeah, it is damp and wet and cold. Yeah. Well, not as cold as Toronto.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm in Florida, so. It's
Okay,
not,
you're okay.
yeah, no.
No,
It's cold
I
here, but
missed.
it's not as cold as Toronto, that's for sure.
I missed seeing the face of the speaker. We haven't
I
seen
know.
it.
I don't know why they didn't have him stand in front. Again, it's what
That's
it
sort
is.
of that was sort of yeah. I missed that. Anyway.
Yeah, this is where you try and train people, and you would think that they forget that we're on Zoom. And
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
this is one of the reasons why I think we should get rid of it. But I know there's a lot of people that come on because of
Yeah.
where I am, where you are, where Joe is.
Right,
But
that's
it's just,
right.
it is
At least I'm away a lot, and then I still keep in contact. That is the good thing about it.
yeah, no,
I
same
think so.
here.
Yeah.
Same
I
here.
think it's critically important. I can't get to Toronto.
No,
Yeah,
and
no,
all
I think as long as we all
many
understand it's a passive experience, it is what
Yeah.
it is, right?
painful, but it is better than nothing.
Right. It is
And
a passive experience.
especially people like Lionel and Stephen Bianco who all can't come.
Yeah, I know.
That's right.
I know. So we'll just have to see how to make it work. I don't know why it's so difficult to get that set up, but
Thank you for the coordination, David.
what's that?
Thank you for organizing this.
Well, we'll try. We'll see if we can. I don't want to keep it running, but you know, it's tough. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay,
Okay, have a great day, guys.
Okay, thanks,
well.
David.
Okay.
bye-bye.
Bye.